Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 23, entitled The Brahmana's Wives Blessed. Text 47. What? Huh? "46 was done yesterday, no? Huh? Was covered yesterday. 47. Hitva Anyan Bhajate Yam Shri Padasparsham Ashayam Asakrit Svaatma Dosha Apavargenam Tat Yachnam Janam Mohinim Hitvanyan Bhajate Yam Shri Hitvanyan Bhajate Yam Shri Padasparsha Shayasakrit Padasparsha Shayasakrit Svatma Dosha Pavargenam Svatma Dosha Pavargenam Tadyachna Janamohini Tadyachna Janamohini Hitvanyan Bhajate Yam Shri Padasparsha Shayasakrit Svatma Dosha Pavargenam Tadyachna Janamohini Hitvanyan Bhajate Yam Shri Padasparsha Shayasakrit Svatma Dosha Pavargenam Tadyachna Janamohini Hitvanyan Bhajate Yam Shri Padasparsha Shayasakrit Svatma Dosha Pavargenam Tadyachna Janamohini Mataji? Okay. Hitva, giving up. Anyan, others. Bhajate, worships. Yam, which. Lord. Shri, the goddess of fortune. Padasparsha, for the touch of his lotus feet. Ashraya, with the desire. Asakrit, constantly. Svaatma, of herself. Dosha, the faults of fickleness and pride. Apavargena, putting aside. Tat, his. Yachna, begging. Jana, ordinary humans. Mohini, bewildering. Translation and purport by disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Hoping that the touch of His lotus feet, hoping for the touch of His lotus feet, the goddess of fortune perpetually worships Him alone, leaving aside all others and renouncing her pride and fickleness. That he begs is certainly astonishing to everyone. Purport. The Supreme Master of the Goddess of Fortune herself, obviously, does not have to beg for food, as pointed out here by the Brahmanas, who are finally manifesting real spiritual intelligence. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalaka Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stavitam Yena Bhutale Svam Rupa Kara Mayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shrutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Hare Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangira Devi Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Varamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hitvanyan bhajateyam Shri Padasparsha Shaya Sakrit Svatma Dosha Pavargena Tadyachna Janamohini. Hoping for the touch of his lotus feet, the goddess of fortune perpetually worships him alone, leaving aside all others and renouncing her pride and fickleness. That he begs is certainly astonishing to everyone. Here we are continuing with the story of an enlightened Brahmana worshippers who had been very much absorbed in performance of karma kanda activities. They have been so absorbed to the extent that they couldn't understand or recognize what is the real aim, what is the real goal, what is the real benefit of performance of such kind of activities. We definitely understand that the Vedic knowledge is meant for elevation. The Vedic knowledge is meant for purification. And throughout all the Vedic scriptures, it has been encouraged that one should perform certain kind of duties, that one should perform certain kind of activities in that order to again elevate oneself, to purify oneself, and to ultimately benefit oneself. But what is therefore then the real benefit? This is something that most often it's misunderstood. And it is misunderstood because one strongly identifies with this material body. Because this is the case, therefore then if one would be directly offering the topmost essence of the Vedic scripture, then nobody would be taking interest in it. For that reason, the Vedic scriptures are presented in such a way that they offer certain benefits. As we heard yesterday, Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunyo Bhavarjuna, Nirdvandva Nitya Sattva Stonir Yoga Kshema, Atmavan, flowery words of offering various kinds of blessings, various kinds of benedictions, even in this world, and then what to speak of those benedictions which promise enjoyment and life in higher planetary systems. So it is very attractive. And therefore, people take or used to take, nowadays even that is not the case, but because they're getting material benefits again, they're getting material benefits even by not following the Vedic scriptures. Of course, they won't be getting them for a long time, because if you want to benefit in any way, if you want to experience any kind of satisfaction, even in the material world, you have to perform some kind of dharma. So they're getting benefit because they have been performing dharmic or pious activities in their previous lifetimes. So what they're doing now, even though people don't follow the Vedic scriptures, they're just expending those pious credits. This is why they're having some opulences, they're having some facilities. So therefore, to gain such kind of position when one can be exposed to material opulence and enjoy the same, then one has to perform certain sacrifices. And those sacrifices have been enjoined in the Vedic scriptures in such a way that they also gradually purify the one who is performing them. But the problem is that in spite of such performances, very often those sacrifices don't really change the consciousness of a performer. That contaminated consciousness remains the same. Pretty much. There might be some progressive element within it, but absorption in the body, absorption in the senses, absorption and attraction towards material objects, that's something that remains. We know when we hear from Nectar of Devotion that cycle of sinful activities, at Papa Beach, how actually only one can, like switching off the fan, one can completely eradicate that by being exposed to devotional service. There is no other way. But switching off this fan is the process of practicing devotional service. If one does not start practicing devotional service, one will practically remain eternally entangled within this cycle of fruitive activities. And fruitive activities means what? Because I am absorbed in the body, therefore I will have to receive another body to hope for enjoyment, but actually, of course, there's going to be suffering as well. This is the duality of the material existence. So therefore, Vedic scriptures mostly, is said, more than 90-something% deal with the karma kanda activities, something a little bit with the jnana kanda, and hardly anything is there but real essence of it, which is bhakti. And Krishna speaks what is that essence, what is that bhakti. Vedaischa sarvar aham eva vedyo, Vedanta krit vedavid eva chaham. This is the essence. Krishna knows the Vedanta, he is the knower and he is the speaker of it, but he is the essence of it. And then hardly anybody knows Krishna. And we see here that therefore Brahmanas, how could they recognize Krishna? They couldn't recognize Krishna. They really didn't know Krishna. So why were they performing all these different sacrifices? They were completely bewildered. And as it stated here in the purport, bereft of spiritual intelligence. Yes, they were very intelligent. That is undoubtedly there. Many people are also very intelligent. They know how to utilize scriptures for their own personal benefits and utilize so many things, material facilities for their own personal benefits, but they don't know the essence of it and therefore they become entangled. We have seen those who practice karma kanda activities which are promising so many various kinds of pleasures of life. They really do not have this kind of spiritual intelligence. And therefore they end up suffering various kinds of reactions for performance of those. You know that Lord Buddha appeared just to prevent actually this kind of misuse of the Vedic scriptures, practically to the extent that he had to absolutely eradicate any connection with the Vedic scriptures. Because so many animals have been slaughtered in the name of so-called spiritual advancement, spiritual benefits. And he just had to say, no, we can't follow anymore. It was contaminated to such an extent that there was no way to reverse it at that point. People were so engrossed in all of those karma mimamsa type of activities. And there are plenty of pastimes, even just in Srimad Bhagavatam itself, pointing out that how such kind of activities don't benefit one, but actually, again, as I stated, they create so many various kinds of reactions for which one has to suffer. We know the activities of King Nriga. How did King Nriga end up? And it wasn't directly his fault that one cow given to some Brahmana strayed away to somebody else, and that Brahmana claimed it back, but then the other one also claimed it as well, and then he was cursed. He had to become a lizard. And King Parchinabarhishat, in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, you hear the story how Narada Muni took compassion upon him and had to narrate the whole allegorical pastime and story of another king, actually, of him very self practically, but with just another name and a little bit varied circumstances, just to convince the king to stop all the different sacrifices that he was performing. Because all of those sacrifices practically didn't benefit anyone, really. As I said, it didn't benefit the king, even himself, who was performing it, because he would have to face the consequences of killing those animals also. And then what to speak of animals? Animals were not very excited being slaughtered. So therefore Narada Muni had to speak such kind of elaborate pastime or allegory to convince the king to stop with all these sacrifices. And we see that such kind of performances, as we pointed out, even Lord Buddha had appeared, they have no compassion. They have no compassion. Why? Because they don't have real intelligence. They don't have compassion, even for themselves, because they're slaughtering their very soul. They're not advancing in the spiritual life. And they remain trapped with within this realm of material existence. So therefore Narada Muni very compassionately presented the teachings to the Parchinabarhishat king, which enabled him therefore to liberate himself from all these misconceptions. And of course take to the path of bhakti. So we see by the performance of various kinds of sacrifices, of various kinds of yagyas like this, and we know in Bhagavad Gita, what does Krishna says, what is the topmost sacrifice, what is the topmost yagya? Japos smi, bharatarshaba, it's a japa, it's the chanting. And what is the chanting? It's not like we know, it is an offense to consider the chanting to 8 offense to be utilized or to consider to grant some kind of material benefit, to be one of the ritualistic activities mentioned in the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas. So that's not what chanting is meant for. But again, somebody may misuse it. So therefore, there has to be a proper consciousness, there has to be a proper understanding of the final goal of life. Because when one performs all these different kinds of activities and sacrifices, he becomes clouded, he becomes eclipsed, he becomes completely bewildered. As we see here in the case of these brahmanas performing the yagya. The Yogeshwar himself comes and requests the fruit of that yagya, but they can't recognize him. They can't recognize him. Just contrary, for example, we see when Nanda Baba was performing, they were preparing for the sacrifice to worship the Govardhan hill and everything. When Krishna requested, my dear father, why are you doing this? And they had some discussion. But all the Vrajabasis and Nanda Baba, they agreed. They agreed to offer all the worship, all the yagyas, all the foodstuffs, everything. They agreed to give it to Krishna. So why is that so? Because they had devotion. Because they had a devotion. But obviously here, the Brahmanas, they didn't have that devotion. And they were quite, unfortunately, therefore very self-centered and selfish, considering only which kind of benefits, material benefits, can be obtained by performing any kind of sacrifice. So therefore this is termed as less intelligent. There's another very interesting example also that is given in the scriptures in the 4th canto. The story of King Daksha, right? Daksha Prajapati. So what did he do? He was also performing the most grandiose type of sacrifice. And then how it did end up? Not very well for Daksha. Of course, ultimately he did got the mercy of the devotees but initially he was so absorbed in this kind of performance of sacrifice that considered Lord Shiva, who is Shiva meaning the most auspicious, to be inauspicious and disqualified for attending this kind of sacrifice. So what kind of intelligence we can say that Lord Daksha had? He had practically what is termed later on in Bhagavatam as Naraka Buddhi, hellish intelligence. So Maitreya Muni, very interestingly, when he describes the end of this sacrifice, what had happened, and how Daksha had lost his head, which has been replaced by the head of the goat, he narrates, he says that actually what was the reason for this? It's because Daksha was so attached to the body. He was so attached to the material body. He was so attached to the material facilities that he completely became also bewildered. And he was just hoping to relish the fruits, material fruits of such kind of yogic performances. And therefore he lost all the intelligence. So there are plenty of such kind of examples pointing out that if we take to practically even process of bhakti, with such kind of mentality of fruitive enjoyment or trying to see how can one benefit materially from such kind of performance, then one loses all spiritual intelligence. And it's practically equivalent to the spiritual suicide. And then one cannot distinguish, between the real goal of life. And he commits offenses, like Daksha. He committed very, very grief. He committed very serious offenses towards Lord Shiva, towards the devotees of the Lord, towards the Lord himself, like Brahmanas here. They rejected Krishna, they rejected Balaram, coward boys. They rejected them all. Just for the sake again of having some kind of material enjoyment and being very attached. Yes, this is what Maitreya is saying, that yes, they are attached. Such kind of personality, such kind of Brahmana, such kind of people, they're attached, they're attracted to the Vedic scriptures. And they're very well versed in the Vedic scriptures, but they miss the essence of it. They miss the essence of it. So how to know this essence? It's It's not easy. It's not easy, again, when one has that kind of contaminated mentality. This is only possible by the mercy of the devotees. Only by the mercy of the devotees. And then how that mercy comes, of course, as any mercy, as any practically pretty much descent of bhakti, it's causeless. It just comes by the certain propensity that each and every devotee has. Because what does it mean to be a devotee of Krishna? It means to have a compassion towards living beings and to give whatever one has. And what does one have? Of course, it's in relationship, in devotional service, there is some bhakti, at least some bhakti is there. That's what devotees have, more or less. So to extend that bhakti to everyone else, not considering whether one is qualified or not. This is specific mercy and qualification of Lord Nityananda, without considering whether one is qualified or not. Of course, even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to bestow such mercy to everyone, but even specifically more so Lord Nityananda. So giving such a mercy, this is why Narada Muni enlightened King Parchinabarhishat. Yeah. And what is more even interesting, because those performers of such kind of activities, they really lose all the compassion towards other living beings. So therefore, the only way to gain that compassion and to advance in spiritual life is the association of the devotees. For that reason, we see in the scriptures that by that kind of a devotee association, when one has the mercy of a devotee, because very often when devotees see that something inappropriate is taking place, it is not just that the devotee would condemn and curse and renounce. No, devotee will have compassion. Devotees will have compassion. This is the nature of a devotee. And they will try to do everything practically to benefit the one, like we know, and the most common story of the scorpion and a brahmana, right? When scorpion was drowning and the brahmana tried to pick him out, it got sting, again did, and then he was asking, why are you doing it over and over? Because that's his nature, to sting, but my nature is to try to save him. It's a natural quality of a devotee to try to save living entities from being entangled in such kind of actually reactionary activities. So we see that even more so, what is interesting, that when one performs such kind of activities, but it's somehow in some relationship to the devotees, that is the greatest fortune. That is even more fortunate. Having some kind of relationship, direct or indirect, with the devotees, that also invokes the mercy of the Lord. Because like Prahlad Maharaj, Lord Nrsimhadev said that because your father is in relationship to you, he's your father, and of course whatever, so many generations, they will all be liberated. And then the wives of the Kaliya, why did Kaliya got the mercy? That was discussed. Did he deserve? What did he do to gain the mercy of the Lord? He didn't do anything. But his wives were devotees of Krishna. So just because he was in relationship to them, he received so much mercy. Yeah. There was that story I heard that has been said by one Gaudiya Math sannyasi, that during one anniversary of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he narrated that how one of his disciples, he had out-of-body experience and he was practically being dragged to hell by Yamadutas, and then he was placed in front of Yamaraj, judged to be, he became very sinful. He fell from the path of devotional service. But then, upon finding out and hearing Yamaraj, that when Yamaraj found out that he was disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he said, okay, fine, so now you go back, just like Ajamil, he got a second chance. So why? How is that? Because he was in relationship, some kind of relationship, at least, maybe not at that present moment, but he used to be in relationship with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj. So therefore then, also we may ask, what is our position? What is our hope when we practice bhakti? When we chant the holy name also. We can chant it with the fruitive mentality, committing these 8 offense, or performing devotional service with some fruitive benefit that I just want some kind of well-positioned this and that, whatever, in bhakti. It might be subtle, it might be, whatever, but might be there, still present to some extent. Then what is our hope? What is of course we know that it is manifested till the level of Nishta on the gross level, but even later on, after Nishta, it might be present in the subtle form. So then what is our hope? So then we can also hope, yes, at least maybe we are in some connection with such a great and pure devotee as Srila Prabhupada. So maybe on those bases we might get, if nothing else, at least maybe another chance, another chance that some other devotee comes and enlightens us, about the real essence of this kind of spiritual performance of spiritual activities. Because otherwise we will miss the essence. We'll miss the essence like these brahmanas. Completely miss the essence. But what is the goal of life? So therefore we are hoping that if we remain, actually there is a commentary, I think by Srila Prabhupada in a 10th canto, and he said that those who remain faithful, remaining faithful meaning staying in ISKCON, then automatically they will obtain, just like the son inherits the properties of the father, they will inherit the spiritual kingdom. So if nothing else, we somehow remain faithful, we somehow remain still sticking around, somehow or other trying our best, endeavoring, then there is that kind of hope, like indeed is said in Nectar of Devotion, hope against the hope. Some hope is there, but still some hope is there, that we gain the mercy. So we see here also, how did Brahmanas get that mercy? Because it is explained earlier, they were the husbands of their wives who were devotees of Krishna. That's how they get the mercy of the Lord. And now they're condemning themselves, saying how we couldn't see Krishna, how we couldn't understand. But again, by the mercy of that kind of association, because their wives have been the devotees. And it's very interesting, in some Purana I read, I can't remember which one it is now, it says that earlier, anyway, that's a kind of background story, but those wives were 7 wives. Of the Brahmanas, there were 7, because they used to be the wives of 7 sages, and there was some yagya being performed, and Agni became very attracted to them, and by his flames he started touching them. So Agni got in trouble, and by the sages those wives got cursed, and they got cursed to achieve this position, became wives of the Brahmanas in the holy Vrindavan Dham. So they became such a great devotees of the Lord that these Brahmanas have been benefiting from. And they knew the essence. They knew the essence. Although apparently living very simple life, like what could we say about gopis and gopas? They live so simply. They're not appearing as big scholars, big whatever brahmanas or any other position, but they know the essence. They know the essence. Whereas anybody who claims any particular position as such, but is missing this essence out, then that position is definitely far, far, far lesser than the position of one who knows Krishna. So knowing Krishna, therefore, we have this discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam to understand who Krishna is, just to know the Krishna. Krishna is the essence, as we said. Krishna is saying himself in Bhagavad Gita. Essence of all the Vedic scriptures. So when we know the essence, then we can understand everything else. But if we know everything else, but we don't know the essence, then we will be completely lost. Completely lost. Like Tapan Mishra, he was completely lost, one of the greatest scholars. But until Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave him his mercy, he didn't know the essence of the Shastra. He didn't know the essence of anything. So it's only by the mercy of the devotees. And that's for this is the real wealth. Like here it is said, Lakshmi, goddess of fortune. What is the real wealth? Anyway, the real wealth is like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is asking this question to Ramananda Rai. Who is the greatest capitalist? Who is the possessor of the greatest wealth? And Ramananda Rai is replying, it is the one who develops love for Radha and Krishna, he is the greatest capitalist. He possesses the greatest wealth. And this is why, for a reason, Lakshmi herself, we know she is the goddess of fortune, right? She possesses all the wealth. She possesses very great position. That's why it's stated here, she's worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord alone. And that's also another interesting point, that, Lakshmi is fickle. That's what I said. She's fickle. She has the pride. But all of this stops in association of Krishna. Like also our steadiness in spiritual life, our distractions in, when we have certain distractions in spiritual life, if we can become steady only when we repose everything on Krishna. Then we can become steady. That is the steadiness. Otherwise, hoping for anything to maintain or to remain or to kind of try to hold upon, it is not going to be possible until it is connected to Krishna. So whatever we do in life, like we know, mostly we have to connect everything. That's what the whole Varnashram Dharma system is all about. We can't just perform pure devotional service. It's not easy. We have so many attachments, we have so many attractions other than, just pure devotional service. So we connect that to Krishna. But once we connect that, then it can become steady. That it can become, beneficial. So if there is no that connection, then it's fickle, then it's temporary, it is not going to last. So it's a very important point to understand everything should be centered and connected to Krishna. Therefore Lakshmi, she is steady only in connection to Krishna. So she is possessing so much, but we know that also she desired something else. She desired to become practically the resident of Vrindavan, and she was granted that. We know in Bilvavan, she had come and begged that mercy to enter into the Vrindavan Dham, and she is there usually we see Lakshmi in posture giving dana, so many things and whatever. But there she is sitting in meditation, but not just ordinary meditation. She is keeping her hands folded like this, begging for the mercy. Begging from whom? So she has become bankrupt. She's the goddess of wealth, but she's bankrupt. Why? Because she doesn't have the wealth of what? Which Brajabasis has. She doesn't have that wealth of love of Radha and Krishna. Yeah. This is what Brajabasis have. So she's begging for that wealth. She's begging for that position, no matter what positions she has direct here in association of her Lord Vishnu Narayan, but she's begging for that position, and she's ready to renounce even that practically to obtain the position of the resident of a Vrindavan. So this is the most wealthiest, this is the most greatest position to have this. Not to perform any sacrifice and go to heaven. No, to become associate, even like Bhaktivinoda Thakur and other great acharyas, they say, even just to become, the dust next to the lotus feet of even devotee, not even necessarily of the Lord, but even devotee of the Lord. Yeah. This is the desire of a Vaishnava. So this is the greatest wealth. To gain some little speck, some kind of grain of attachment and love towards the lotus feet of Krishna. And then even interestingly, what does Krishna want? And this is what this whole verse is about. It's like interesting how Brahmanas are now, because they couldn't recognize Krishna. Why? Because they're in that mood of awe and reverence. They couldn't recognize that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And they were not the only ones being bewildered. It was Lord Brahma, it was Lord Indra. They all have a conception of the Absolute as being very grand, being very magnificent, being very opulent. So then what about this coward boy who is playing in the groves of Raja? This is God, this is the Supreme Absolute, this Krishna, playing around, performing all kinds of tricks and pranks and, all kinds of even apparently inappropriate activities. This is God? Is this who it is? So Brahmanas, they couldn't understand this. But they couldn't understand because they had no devotion. If one has a devotion, then one can immediately recognize the Lord. But that devotion again comes from whom? It comes from the devotees of the Lord. It doesn't come by performance of ritualistic sacrifices. There was sometimes back Ramrup Prabhu gave a very wonderful class on pastimes of Lord Ramachandra, how great devotees could recognize that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He couldn't, because Lord Ramachandra couldn't hide himself in front of them. He had to exhibit that feature. He couldn't be, he couldn't conceal it. He couldn't conceal it. So great devotee, Krishna cannot conceal himself in front of his great devotees. But those who are not, he can conceal. Because this karma kanda type of performances, one really loses one's intelligence. One really loses one's understanding of the real goal of life. Like that, there's that funny story of a man who was performing his duties so diligently, so carefully, so dedicatedly. He was so dutiful throughout his whole life. And then when he was about to retire, then even king heard about him, that this man had retired. And then king desired, I want to see this man. He has been so dutiful to me. And what was this man doing? He was pulling the barge from the river, bringing the barge, pulling a little bit, arranging, and allowing people and whatever goods to be taken from the barge and come from the barge and whatever. That was his job. That was his work. Just every time the barge would come, he would just catch the rope, tie the rope, and somehow pull it a little more closer and whatever. So then the king met this man and he said, I'm so pleased with your service. I'm so fascinated by your dedication and dutifulness. So please ask for any boon, any blessings that you want. Ask for anything. Yeah. And then this man, what did he ask for? Anybody knows? What did he ask for? He said, well, my dear king, let me continue doing this service. But just, on the bank of a river, there's so many thorns and stones sometimes. When I walk, I hurt my feet. So please put so many mattresses on the side so then next time I'm pulling the barge that I don't get hurt. So just see, what a foolish request. So that's what we are doing also. When we don't practice, when we don't know the essence of the devotional service. Daksha, and all these examples we have given of people who perform the fruitive karma kanda activities, what they're asking for, this is what they're asking for. Let me perform our activities in such a pleasant way and remain, performing what, and remaining in the same place where we were till now. I mean, this man could ask king practically to become his personal associate somewhere, living in the same palace, he could have asked king told him, you could ask for anything. But what foolish thing did he ask for? So this is when people ask for material enjoyment, when people ask for going to heaven and so forth. It's so foolish. It's so foolish. This is because they don't understand the benefit. That's another big topic here. What is sakam karma? What is nishkam karma? I'm performing activities with the desire. I don't understand I should perform activities without desire, and even more so for the pleasure of Krishna, because that's where rasa will come, the real rasa, the real taste. So I may have tattva, I may be very learned brahmana, I may be very scholarly, and I can know the shastra backward and forward, but I won't get any taste, higher, greater taste from any of this. Because I really don't know the essence, because I'm not really performing any of this, again, compassion, that's the thing. Like brahmanas, I'm not doing this for Krishna. I'm doing this for myself because I'm selfish. Nishkam means selfless, for the pleasure of Krishna. And I don't know the essence. What does it mean, like we discussed, what it is to be compassionate? To give up, to sacrifice. Not just for, also for pleasure of others, but specifically more so everything for pleasure of Krishna. That's the gopis' position. That's the gopis' position. So then when one is on that level of nishkam karma level, that's where the taste comes. Otherwise the taste will not come. The real taste of bhakti will not come. And that's why one remains bound, and it gains just what this so-called trivial material facilities from such elaborate performances and waste of time and energy. Yeah. So that's why one shouldn't be enamored by any of these flowery words of the Vedas, because one will miss the essence, and one will miss the goal of life. So therefore, even goddess of fortune, so here we said, why Krishna? It said, they couldn't understand why Krishna, who is the master of goddess of fortune, like we know in Bhagavad Gita, one of the signs of victory was what? Madhava. When Krishna is addressed as Madhava, the husband of goddess of fortune. And we know Krishna is Sahasra, Lakshmi, Sahasra, Brahma Samhita. Krishna has so many Lakshmis, he is everything. And then at the end of Bhagavad Gita, Yatra Geshwara Krishna, all the opulence, all the victory, everything. Where is this? Because wherever Krishna is there and Arjuna, there is Lakshmi. But even Krishna renounces all of that. Why is Krishna renouncing all of this? Because he comes and begs. He begs what? He begs for bhakti. He begs for bhakti. That's what he doesn't have. He has everything, but he is begging for bhakti. That's the only thing that we might be having, a little bit. So insignificant. But even that's what Krishna is only attracted to. He's begging for bhakti. And this is what these brahmanas can't understand. This is what these brahmanas can't understand. They just don't have intelligence to understand that this is the position of Krishna. Krishna serves himself. That's why he comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's why he expands as Balaram. This is where that taste is. Taste is being selfless. Taste is being in performance of Nishkam Karma Yoga, not in Sakam Karma Yoga. This is where the taste is. So this is the wonderful instruction for all of us to try to become as selfless as possible and as dedicated as possible in our performance of devotional service, so that we can be able to recognize Krishna in whatever we do. Hare Krishna, time is over. Any comments or questions? Okay, one.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhuji, so at the end, you talk about the position that how Brahmana didn't, he realized he didn't get the taste. He was performing sacrifice, but he didn't get the taste for bhakti. So how about if someone is following all the rules and regulation and he's humble and he's following the culture, but he's not really performing the devotional service? So will he also get the taste, or what?
You won't. One won't gain much taste. Taste comes from, as I said, from performance of Nishkam Karma Bhakti. You will just gain piety, and maybe by that piety you might be able to attract some devotees' attention, but not necessarily the taste of Krishna. Yeah. Okay, so we will stop here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.